Hi there. I'm glad you're here. Welcome to Beyond the Frame. I'm your host, Joe Parente, and I've learned some of my most valuable life lessons from my favorite TV shows and movies. Sure, these works of art entertain us, offer us an escape, and even tap into our emotions. But Ryan, there's one E that's often overlooked.
And that's educational, Joe. If viewed from a different perspective, these stories and their characters can help us to learn and develop as human beings. I'm your co-host, Ryan Vanderhei, and it's our mission with this podcast to help share these unique perspectives with you so that you can grow from the show.
Let's grow. Ooh, I really shouted that.
We're going to really grow, man, off of this.
Boy, are we. After I said that, we're all pretty excited to do some growing. So the topic of today's discussion, Ryan, is the Brazilian political biographical movie, I'm Still Here, starring Fernanda Torres, Fernanda Montenegro, Celton Mello, and directed by Walter Sellis. It's based on the memoir of Marcelo Rubens Paiva. As always, there will be more than 3 spoilers ahead, so consider yourself warned.
Definitely more than 3.
Definitely. Hopefully what we will say will make you want to see it that much more if you haven't. Be sure to leave us a like, rating, or review wherever you see this, or watch. Listen or watch, because it really helps us grow the show. Easy for you to say again.
Yeah, right.
Shall we begin?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
The answers that you're looking for are lying just beyond the frame.
So Ryan, I watched this movie, as you just did.
I did. I just got here.
And you did. You just arrived from the cinema.
I did.
And I asked myself this question several times during this movie.
Okay.
Would I have the strength, the maturity, the presence to hold back my personal anguish for the sake of my children, which in this case, and in yours, don't yet exist?
Right.
And before I go on to discuss this, I just want to talk a little bit about why the answer to this is not an obvious, of course I would.
Right.
Again, I want to stress that I forgot to have kids, so this discussion will be abstract in some way.
I love it.
I so meant to. I just like, oh, damn, I missed the bus.
Yeah.
But I also know that I've seen what I've seen of others, what they've done for their kids. And, even though they're feeling personal distress, they put their loved ones first. Was that funny?
You just have a piece of cat hair in your mouth.
I could tell something. You're right. I meant to put that there.
You looked at me and it was just like, when somebody's back in the day and they have like the wheat.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it was.
Or half a fish sticking out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
With this wonderfully warm discussion.
Yeah. No, a little levity is good because this is a pretty intense film.
It is.
It's not pretty intense. It's incredibly
Very
intense, and it's beautifully done. I'll just say for all y'all out there, Ryan and I discussed this just a little bit before, and we both really love this movie.
Both very moved.
So, incredibly moved. It was just magnificently shot.
It was.
So anyway, I can just imagine how hard it would be for people to stop themselves sometimes because their personal pain could just be, to them, too much to hold back. And I know that when I'm hurting, sometimes it's really hard to act appropriately and keep perspective.
Absolutely.
So
Sure.
So Ryan, I have a question for you.
Okay. I have an answer somewhere.
Yeah,
I
bet you do. You're going to find it. You're going to find. I could almost time how long it's going to take you to find it because you're going to find it so quickly.
Yeah.
So the question is, do you have an instance, know of an instance or no parents or adults in your life that have masked or held back their pain for your sake or the sake of other young people?
I feel like I talk about... listen, there's a lot of, I think, examples in my life that are coming up when you ask me that. And there's so many people I could choose to talk about, but let me just focus on one. My mom. So my mom's mom, always been very close to, always, like I grew up like pretty much down the street from them. So just really, really close relationships, still do. And when I watched this movie, I thought a lot about her because she's so good.
Wow.
In times of chaos, in times of stress, and the few times that me and her have been in situations that were hectic or called for, normally a very emotional response. Whether it be a medical emergency or any kind of situation like that that's very distressful. She handles it so well. And I think it's because she knows that it helps other people. You know what I mean?
I do.
If you are able to, in a situation of distress, be calm, you're diffusing the other people around you. And that always had that effect on me. Like something would happen. There's a medical emergency. And she's so calm, collected. Oh, everything's going to be fine. We're just going to take care of it. No, not a big deal.
That's
that
impressive.
Kind of cadence, that kind of like her voice, just everything about it puts you a little bit at ease. And that always had that effect on me. So when I was watching this movie, and when you asked me that question, she's definitely the first person I think of. And I admire that, and I try to model myself after that.
Good for you.
I tried to kind of have the same response in times of chaos, but it's not easy.
No,
It's
not at
definitely
all.
not easy. And
Not at all.
sometimes it gets you. We're
sure.
all humans, man, and sometimes it really gets you.
I can completely relate. I think I'm more on your side of the fence in a sense than the one who just has all their, is calm in the storm.
Yeah.
I have my moments when I can be, but there are times also when I'm absolutely not.
Sure.
And that does harken back to a discussion that we had several episodes back of where are you?
Right. Are you in the...
Right.
Are you
so
here?
So it sounds like your
Are you
grandmother is here.
Yeah.
She's
in the moment.
absolutely
She's in her
here.
body.
And when you're that way, then you can respond with calm and equanimity and an appropriate behavior instead of wigging out.
Yeah, it's like you said, like the surgeons, doctors,
Yes, exactly.
EMTs, police officers.
That's right.
They're here. They're in their bodies.
Yeah.
They're not here.
They
have to
have
react.
to be.
You can't be
Right.
frantic and people would die.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
So we are beneficiaries.
And I am not an EMT, and I'm not a doctor, and I never will be.
Clearly, I'm not as well.
For one of those reasons alone, I cannot deal with that.
If either one of us were, we would not be sitting here right now.
No, definitely not.
We'd be out contributing to society. But anyway,
Right.
here we are.
Here we are talking
Doing
about
what we're
movies.
doing.
Yep.
So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you for telling that story.
Yeah.
So
What about you? Is there anybody in your life that you think of?
Well, several. One I've already spoken about, which is my sister-in-law, and I've spoken about her in a previous episode. She's the one who went through. Her husband was he was practicing infidelity.
Mm.
She finally decided she'd had enough.
Sure.
The whole point of that was she never, ever, ever badmouthed her ex to her son.
Yes, I remember this. Yeah, I remember you
And
talking about that.
and she did that very consciously.
God,
And he's my step nephew. God, he's such a solid human being. And all he saw was his biological father, his second dad, who's my brother,
Yeah.
and his mom all getting along.
Yeah, and that's massive.
And so he just thought, yippee for me. I got two dads and a great mom. Life's
everybody coming
good.
along, everything's
And
good.
they
yeah.
did that for him. Now,
Respect.
granted, in time and once the dust settled, all three of those adults genuinely love and care about each other,
Yeah.
and that helps.
Yeah.
But the fact that my sister-in-law made that conscious decision never, ever to say one bad thing about her son's father,
Very, very difficult.
my hat eternally goes off to her.
Extremely. I can't agree more.
And the other one, since I've already spoken about that, I wanted to. This is a good friend of mine passed away a couple of years ago, year and a half ago, and his father was in something called the Bataan Death March in the Philippines during World War II. I've never heard of this.
No.
This was it was a forcible transfer of POWs between 72,000 and 78,000. 72,000. Between 72,000 and 78,000 Filipino and U.S. prisoners of war.
Oh, wow.
And they were marched over a distance of 65 miles.
Jesus.
And
in the Philippines this is happening?
Correct.
Okay.
And this is occupied territory. The Japanese forces were doing this.
Okay.
And you can look this up. It's very well documented. I'm not going to go into detail because I started to write about some of the atrocities that happened during this march. And
too much to even talk about.
And it's missing the point to a degree.
Okay.
So my friend's father was on that march. Put it this way: if you sat down, you'd get shot.
Oh, God.
So the Japanese, and I'm not saying the Japanese are any different from any other culture, unfortunately, in world history, but they saw POWs as kind of subhuman. Not all.
Sure, that's definitely happened in a lot of different
exactly.
cultures.
So I'm not. There's no judgment on Japanese whatsoever here.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say that after the war, a Japanese general and 2 of his officers were tried for war crimes and executed because of the incredible brutality that was shown during this march.
Sure.
Once the march was over, their prison conditions were, well, now it's legendary how horrific they were. Small boxes where you couldn't necessarily sit down, but you couldn't stand up.
Oh, God.
For days and days and days. They did a sunshine torture where they would just sit you in the hot sun of the Philippines with no cover, no helmet,
humidity.
no nothing. And if you asked for water, they'd shoot you. So...
yeah, like you said, man, the gruesome nature of it just sends chills down your spine.
Exactly. It was so gruesome that I stopped writing about it. So, and to my earlier point, there are so many other examples of human atrocities that I just thought, why go into this? The point is that my friend's father survived this, and of course he brought it home with him, but it wasn't anything that he talked about easily. He almost never talked about it. Every now and again, he'd drop a little fact about what it was like to my friend, but it was very brief. And then it was just like they were running a family restaurant. He came back and started a restaurant with his wife and all the kids. And it was an incredibly popular restaurant in Albuquerque.
Oh, that's great.
It lasted for like 30 some odd years.
Yeah.
And that was what he decided to put his focus on. And the family focus is on that restaurant. And my friend said his father was just widely loved. He loved his father. He said his father was really kind. Wow. He did have a temper, and every now and again he was a little scary, but that was part of the times too. Like corporal punishment was more of a kind of a normal thing back then.
Right.
But he was always taken by the dignity his father showed and the bravery his father showed, and didn't want to spread his pain to anyone else.
Sure. He had suffered enough. He had been through it enough.
Exactly. So, and he did that for the sake of his children. So, hats off to that man.
Hats off eternally. A lot of love to that guy. And look at the effect that can have on the people, which is what we're going to talk about with this film. But your sister-in-law, look at how your nephew turned out. Yeah. Look at how your friend turned out. I mean, the profound effect that shielding them from the pain can have. And
exactly. And so we're going to go into that a little bit here.
Let's do it.
With this movie. So let me give a very brief recap of the movie. We're in 1970 Brazil, I believe it started. We see a happy family consisting of mom and dad, 4 girls and 1 boy. They live across the street from a beach in Rio. You can see that the beach is like an extension of their house.
Yeah, they can reach out basically and touch the sand. Yeah,
totally. And I gotta say, it looked really great to me.
Yeah, it looked amazing.
That did. It looked fantastic.
Right.
It was all very idyllic domestic stuff.
Sure.
Everyone getting along. The sisters dancing. That was pretty funny when they're mouthing the Serge Gainsborough song and they have no idea what they're saying in French. That was funny. I really, really enjoyed that. The son bringing the stray dog home. You could see where that was going.
Yeah.
But I still enjoyed it that, they're saying no way mom's going to go for it. Well, mom's swimming in the ocean. And dad doesn't know that. And dad's at home in his office, so I'm going to ask dad. Yeah, totally. What did mom say? She said to ask you.
I did that so many
Love
times
that.
as a kid.
Yeah. And, and then she tells the kid to put the dog in the garage for overnight. And of course he brings it to bed with him.
Right.
Anyway, it was really fun to see the housekeeper as part of the family. The friends are coming over for meals. You can tell that their house was the house to go to.
Doors always open.
For the adults and the kids.
Yeah. anyone's welcome. Stay
Yep.
for lunch.
Yep.
Everybody, just a really, really wholesome, warm, inviting family.
Big time. You could also tell that, it became pretty clear too. They're also kind of intelligentsia.
Yeah.
So these are we learned that, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but the husband / father was a former congressman.
Yeah.
And you can tell he's very articulate and
Yep,
bright,
he's an engineer
and he's an
now.
engineer. And you can tell by their friends. It's a real hub of social
intellectual.
Yeah. Also, they just look like fun.
Yeah.
They look like people you'd want to hang out with.
Definitely.
So anyway, you get the idea. It was clearly a happy and dynamic household. And we're also told that they're in the midst of a military dictatorship, which was kind of the trend, if you will, in South America at the time. Chile with Pinochet, and it was Argentina had that also.
Right.
And we see evidence of this early on in the movie. The oldest daughter is in a car with her friends when they get pulled over at gunpoint in that tunnel. Yeah. It's pretty scary stuff. We also learn that the father, like I said, played by Selton Mello, is a former congressman. And we see him having low volume discussions with guests at the house and on the phone. We know he's up to something, but we don't know what.
Right.
So at one point in the movie, armed men show up at the house and take Rubens away, that's his character's name, for a deposition. Exactly.
Deposition.
Exactly, in quotes. Yeah.
Yeah.
He should be back tomorrow at the latest.
Right.
So they say. Armed men stay at the house while Rubens is gone. Pretty scary stuff with a house full of 5 kids. And he's never seen again. There, I told you there'd be spoilers, and there you go. So for those who don't know, this is a brutal regime brutal time in Brazil's history that lasted from 1964 to 1985. And I think a lot of people don't know that.
21 years.
Yep.
My God.
And like I said, there were other military dictatorships at the time in Chile and Argentina and Uruguay. It's a dark historical period for all those countries with thousands of people that were disappeared. They were subject to torture and political imprisonment was rampant for all these countries.
Yeah.
Part of what makes this movie so engrossing is that it's not only a true story, but that the director of the movie, Walter Salles, met this family in the 60s and was a fixture at their home. So he was one of these little kids that was there all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So this movie is very personal for him.
Yeah.
Also, one of the writers is the youngest son that we saw in the movie.
Wow. Yeah, we, my girlfriend and I, again, we were at a Deadline Contenders event, and I'm Still Here was there. And
Okay.
we heard that, the story of how he was around this family and inside their house during the time. And
Yeah.
it was like, whoa.
Yeah.
So the
And
personal connection there.
which
comes through.
It does come through. It does come through. And it also gives that whole idyllic look that we were seeing some credence. Like this wasn't a Hollywood concoction.
Right.
This was how that guy, the director, was there.
Yeah, he knows from personal experience what it
Exactly.
was like.
And he credits that house, that family, that time as being foundational in his political and cultural development.
Yeah. It's profound.
Fantastic. So we watch what happens after the husband is taken, after the oldest daughter and the wife are taken, and how the wife, Eunice, played by Fernanda Torres, who's nominated for an Academy Award.
Yes, she is.
She's the younger Eunice. And then her real-life mother, Fernanda Montenegro, plays the older.
Whoa, I didn't know that. So she's like the much older version?
Yes,
Wow.
exactly.
Oh, that makes sense now, because I thought, wow, this is great cast. She looks a lot like her.
I thought it was the best makeup job of all time. Because you just, how did they make her look that old?
Yeah, they look so much alike.
It wasn't actually such a stretch.
Makes
They
sense.
just used a different woman
Sure.
and a related woman.
Well, that's
which is-
cool then that her mom was also in the movie.
Oh my God,
with her.
yes. And they're both, they're both storied kind of acting legends in Brazil.
Yeah, I mean, her mother was nominated for an
Yeah.
Oscar.
Correct. Yeah.
Back then. Yeah.
So we watch Eunice navigate her own detention, but we also watch her raising 5 kids
At the same time.
after her husband never returns from police custody. Yeah. So before we dive into the the specifics of scenes,
Okay.
why don't we take a bad guy break?
Let's do it, man.
Okay.
Let's break it up here.
Okay.
Before we get back to the seriousness at hand.
Exactly. All right. Are you ready?
I'm ready, man.
Okay.
Who do you got for me today?
So, I really like this one. I think it's great.
Okay.
This is going to stump you, so just don't feel bad when you don't get it. Okay? The year is 2006.
Okay.
The medium is film. The genre is historical/political drama/biography.
Okay.
It stars Forrest Whitaker.
The Butler?
No. Boy, that was quick. That would have been impressive.
Forrest Whitaker. Yeah, that's the only one I can remember. Oh, I'm not going to know it. You're
James
right.
McAvoy?
Yeah, I'm not going to know it. I know.
Oh, you
see
do
him in
know
my
the
head.
movie. Wow.
Yeah, I just
I'm
can't.
impressed by that.
Yeah.
It's called The Last King of Scotland.
Yep.
So
He was
this
nominated for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is based on the events during the brutal regime of Idi Amin in Uganda in the 1970s.
Wow.
I heard a lot about this regime as a kid before I was a poli-sci major years later.
Really?
It only lasted 8 years.
Wow.
But in 8 years, care to guess how many Ugandans were estimated killed
Oh,
by
God.
their own leader?
Oh, God.
Amnesty International estimates it to be 500,000 people.
500,000.
So I figured Idi Amin was a really good bad guy to have for this bad guy break.
It's hard to put numbers to something like that. Like when you think of just even, like in this movie, you think of even just one person, the profound impact that can have on the community, on
Yes.
the family, everyone's
Yes.
affected. And that's one.
That's
Just one.
One, yeah.
You're talking about 500,000.
Yep.
All those families, all that trauma and turmoil. Just,
Yep.
Oh,
And these are people who aren't, it's not like these are criminals. These are political prisoners. These are people who have a differing point of view, a different perspective, who
Yeah.
might have the courage to actually speak out against the regime.
yeah. It's not like they signed up for war.
No.
And killed in action.
No.
And it's not like they broke the law.
No.
Really.
That's right. But look, unfortunately, this has been happening almost as long as human beings have been on the planet. You know,
Sure,
I mean,
unfortunately.
you know, the biggest killer of all time, I believe, is Joseph Stalin. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Woo. So anyway, that's our bad guy.
Man, that's a great bad guy. A bad one. But
It's a really,
good one.
really bad one,
Good
and
break
it's
here.
quite a movie too.
I haven't seen it, but I know of it.
It's
and I know
good.
of his performance
really
and how much
good.
it's talked about. So
We might have to do that at
I
some
have to
point.
do one of those. Yeah.
So should we jump into a scene and talk about
Let's get
a
to
little
scene
bit of
number one
I'm
here.
Still Here. Scene number 1.
I'm excited to see which scenes you picked because again, I literally just got here from the cinema, so it's so fresh in my mind.
I will say that I picked ones that were kind of obvious, but they are still going to give us plenty to talk about.
Okay.
And I also want to bring in snippets from other scenes
Okay.
because I have a slightly different point that I want to bring up too in a little bit.
Yeah.
Scene number 1, Eunice comes home late one night after being detained by the police. She's been detained for 13 days.
Yeah.
She has no idea if her daughter's returned home until she looks in the bedroom and she sees her there. She looks in her room. She comes into her room and she sees one of her daughters sleeping in her bed. She looks lovingly at her, lets her sleep. She then moves slowly to the bathroom to wash off the filth from the police station.
From 13 days.
From
being
13
a
days.
prisoner.
And yeah, in horrible conditions.
Yeah.
It was very grim, to say the least. She's in the shower for a long time. Her daughter wakes up.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, deep breath. Her daughter wakes up and watches her mother in the shower, scrubbing her skin raw.
Yeah.
And mom doesn't know that her daughter can see her, obviously. Once the mother comes out, she wraps a towel around herself. The daughter comes into the bathroom, and instantly the mother puts a smile on her face, moves to soothe her daughter, reassure her that everything's okay. She put her daughter first, absolutely, and did all she could to put her at ease despite her own pain, anger, and frustration. And the dad is still gone. and she's putting on a brave face.
Yeah.
And she did it so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you said, she comes into the bedroom, just has a brief moment to the relief that her daughter's okay. She's sleeping, not going to wake her up. And then just your own personal struggle and what you're going through internally, scrubbing off the filth of being a prisoner for 13 days, and not just any ordinary prisoner. These are horrific conditions.
Horrific conditions, and she's being interrogated.
Yeah.
And she's being asked to identify people in these books of the books of mugshots. And she's one of her own. She's in there.
And her husband's still missing at this point.
And her husband's still missing. And while she's back in her cell, she can hear the sounds of people being tortured.
Yep.
And
to put all that aside.
Yep.
And to put a smile on her face.
Yep.
And to try to just... I was talking to my girlfriend about this because we watched together, but as a parent, you have this desire to put yourself second. I don't matter right now. It's about protecting and shielding my children from this horror. They're still innocent. They're still young. They still have... You know what I mean? That spark, that life spark, where things are, you're kind of naive in a brilliant way. Mm-hmm. Ignorance is bliss, right? And you want to keep that bliss intact.
To me, that is innocence.
Yeah,
that is innocence, and all children are born with it.
Yeah,
and innocence does fade in varying degrees for everyone.
For varying reasons.
For varying reasons. Yeah. And when you can still see innocence in a young person, that is such a beautiful, not a gift, but it's such a beautiful thing that you don't want to see diminished. You don't want to taint that. You don't want to interfere with it.
You hope.
You hope.
You hope that people don't want. You hope that you have people like this.
Because you do, right. And you do have monsters who take advantage of that. And you do have beautiful parents like Eunice, mm-hmm. who cares more for them and cares more for their well-being and their happiness
than her own.
And this will build because we have some other themes to go with off of this too. So we're just going to jump into scene 2 here.
Let's do it.
So later in the movie, after the husband/father has been gone for some time, a family friend comes to the house to tell Eunice that her husband is indeed dead. They don't have any details about where he is, and the government won't formally recognize his murder in their custody. Eunice is alone, so the family friend leaves, and Eunice is alone in the room. Sorry, let me back up. Eunice is alone in the room with the man breaking the news, but the house is full of her kids.
Yeah, they're all running around.
They're all running around outside
TV.
Of this room.
Yeah.
So the man leaves, and Eunice stays behind in the room, crying. One of her daughters comes to the room, and Eunice immediately puts on a smile, wipes her eyes. And the daughter asks if she's been crying, and Eunice just tells her it's okay. Everything is okay. And she's like, Mom, what's wrong? What's wrong? Hey, come on. It's okay. Come on. Let's go out.
Yeah.
Let's go out into the house.
This scene in particular, man, is just broke me because I absolutely loved the shot when we first see the daughter open up and she's turned the opposite direction.
She has her back to the daughter at first.
She's trying to, and then by the time she turns around, she's put a smile on.
That's right.
She's wiped a tear or two.
That's
away.
right. I'm glad you brought that, the way she was positioned, and I didn't bring that up because when you see the shot of the daughter coming in, Ryan's correct. Not only she was sitting in a room alone, but with her back turned to the door.
Just in case anybody comes in.
Because she was alone in the room. She could have just been openly wailing, and she wasn't. Yeah. She was already turned away from the door, mm-hmm. quietly sobbing.
Yeah.
Not making a sound.
Speaks volumes. And just heartbreaking, again, that she's just learned the news that her husband is dead.
Yeah.
Confirmed.
Yeah.
Confirmation. He's gone. He's never coming back. And to the initial response to hearing information like that, hearing news like that, it would just break you. And It does by all means, but she doesn't have a chance to mourn. She has to.
That's right.
Flick the switch. It's not. I can't. I'll deal with this later.
That's right.
Right now, it's about the kids.
That's right.
And it was something so small and futile too, which I loved. Is that it was just, oh, he broke my doll. You know, like such a silly kid thing. And it's not a really, in terms of what's happening here. Your father's dead, and the doll's broken.
Well, exactly, and the father's dead, but and there's so much more to it, because 1971 Brazil, we saw how difficult it was. She couldn't even get money out of their account.
Yeah, because it was
they
you
need
the
husband's signature.
Right. You're locked out of everything.
She's locked out of everything. She also is now the head of a household of
5
kids. Her husband has been the victim of political violence, which doesn't put her in the clear by a long shot.
Sure.
She's already been detained. Yes, they let her go. But when you have a military regime like that, it's not as though they need proof.
Right.
They can arrest and kill who they want. And they did.
At any point in time.
And so it's not just like not in the clear by a long shot. And she knew that.
Yeah.
And that compounds what was already so incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
So as the movie goes on and you see the difficulty that she goes through, just trying to live the life, like she has to let the housekeeper go.
Right.
Didn't want to. She was like part of the family.
Yeah.
And that housekeeper also was owed a few months back pay.
Yeah.
And Eunice didn't know that
Yeah.
because the husband took care of that.
Right.
And the housekeeper didn't want to bring it up. Because she loved that family. And and it's like, but I haven't been paid.
Yeah.
And then to watch her, I knew when she was counting the money and going to her room, I was like, she's going to let her go. She's got to let her go.
And she made her whole.
She did make her whole. She gave her the money that she owed her and had to say goodbye.
Also brilliant that we didn't see it. That we see her open the door and then it cuts to
Correct.
We don't see their interaction at all. We just know what happened.
We do. We didn't need to see that.
We didn't. And it was great.
So at this point, I want to ask another question.
Okay.
Before scene 3. When is not telling your kids bad news also unfair to them? When does it become pushing a false narrative too far? How does one determine that? I don't mean that as an abstraction. I mean that really. That's a real question. I asked my oldest brother that this morning.
Yeah.
Because there was a scene in the movie where one of her daughters, the second oldest, said, "You're lying to us. Stop lying to us."
Yeah.
And because there is a point where it is important for your kids to know certain things. It is important for your kids to understand that bad things happen.
Sure.
And people die. And how does one gauge that?
Yeah.
And clearly Eunice was going off of a particular type of age and maturity, and she knew her kids and who could handle what to a degree. But I also come from a household where, let me back up. My mother was 100% Irish.
Okay.
And I learned as I got older and spent time in Ireland how Irish she was. Even though she was born and raised in San Francisco, she was so Irish. And I have Irish friends, and
Sure.
Irish friends will tell you that when issues come up, if something difficult comes up, well, there is a solution. It's called the corner pub.
Oh,
and I know that sounds like a generalization, but I can even laugh about this with my Irish friends. If things get challenging, let's go have a pint. And maybe we can talk about it, but probably not.
Sure.
And my mom was this way to a degree. If you ignore a problem long enough, it's just going to go away.
Sure. I don't think this is specifically strict to.
It's not too Irish, but no, it's definitely not.
Problem.
It's definitely not. But
I know many of these people.
Exactly, for sure.
Yeah.
But I asked that as well. So to me, there's on one side being incredibly mature and brave, and there's also a point where it's like, hey, you got to break it to your kids. You got to give them some reality. You got to help them out because they see something's off. They see you're upset. Kids have eyes. Kids aren't born dumb.
Yeah.
And you're telling them everything's okay, but I see your eyes from crying. I can tell that something's not right. Besides, having all the policemen in the house and stuff like that.
Right.
I just wonder, how do you determine that? So here's something I just want to throw out there as not a necessarily a specific answer to any one of those particular situations. I know this from personal experience. It depends on how okay the person with that news or perspective is with that. I think little kids can take a lot. It doesn't mean that you tell them about atrocities like Idi Amin in Uganda. But if you're okay with a subject like having the talk about sex, your kids are going to be okay. If they sense your discomfort, it will make them uncomfortable. It's like, I had a friend who thought about running for office, and I said, with all the stuff you've done in your life, and he said, hey, I'm good with it. I'm okay with it. I am. I'm fine.
By it.
I have nothing to be ashamed of. Yeah, I did that. That was my life. And I've come to terms with it.
Yeah.
And I just thought, that is so true. If I'm talking to a friend and I know I'm going to disappoint them with some kind of news or something and I'm uncomfortable about it, it doesn't go well.
Right, because they feel that.
They feel it.
Yeah. We're empathetic creatures.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I think there's a degree of gauging how mature someone is, gauging how well they take news and you know that and being able to gauge that to a degree. But there's also how okay are you or the person with the news, with the perspective, with how comfortable are you with it?
That's a great point.
I have seen in my own life that if that person really gets it and has come to terms with it, then they can tell people who are younger or a little more naive or don't have that perspective where they're coming from, and they can take it.
That's a fantastic point to bring up. I agree with you. I think it does largely, the response is largely based on the way that the news is delivered. If the person is approaching you with calm, collection, peaceful, there's no, again, if they're visibly uncomfortable themselves, it's going to make you uncomfortable.
That's right.
And that's a great point.
That's right.
When you're bringing, it's so tough, like you said, to know when that line is, when they're too young, let me shield them from this.
That's right.
But also, it's wrong to withhold this information for long because I'm keeping up a lie.
That's right.
That the children
You're promoting
have
a
the
false
right
narrative
to know.
That's right.
So at what point is that? Because you could tell, which I thought was absolutely beautiful, that there were certain kids, the older kids, that knew just from a look.
Yes, they
could
did.
Tell. They
sure.
They didn't need to be told, hey, your father's dead. They could really understand their mother and see a look on her face and understand, okay, I get it.
And they see the presence of the military. They know that this has happened with other
the
people,
puzzle
and they
together.
can put it together. And also and this wasn't one of the scenes I chose, but we also got to see later in the movie when they're adults and they're talking about, when did you know? When did you know Dad
was my favorite line of the movie. He said, when did you bury him?
Yeah, when did you bury him?
And then the girl saying, it was, I think, when we left.
Right.
And you remember that scene
where she was looking at the house, and for those of you who'd seen the movie, you'll know exactly what Ryan and I are talking about. That scene was hard. I could relate to her. I could relate to that little girl, because there have been times when I've left. Look, I've even left hotel rooms. Like I had 3 nights there, and I look at it and I was like, thank you to this space. I've left friends' homes and just looked back and like taken a moment and clocked everything.
Imagine that house.
And then I've been moved out of homes at the house that we grew up in. I lived my first 19 years in it, and I'll never forget my last look at that empty house.
Yeah,
broke my heart.
Never gonna see it again.
And watching that little girl looking at this empty house.
Hurt. It hurt. It got you.
Yeah, it sure did.
Right into
It sure did.
Yeah.
I don't think I have time to bring up the next scene, but I just want to mention it. Not in depth, but I just want to mention it because I thought this showed so much dignity.
Yeah.
There's a scene later in the movie where a magazine comes to take a picture, and take a picture of the family and write an article. And the family poses, and the photographer says, "We need you to look more sad. The editor has asked that you look more sad."
And everybody starts laughing.
And everyone starts laughing. She said, "No, we're going to smile.
Yeah.
We're going to smile for this." And I love at the end of the movie, we got to see the real picture.
Yes. I also love that they recalled back to that moment at the end when
Yes.
they take the family photo.
Yeah, for sure.
When she's much older.
Yes.
And then smile.
That's
and
right.
then everybody smiles, and then that's the end of the movie. I thought that was brilliant. Brilliant.
So much to love about this movie.
And this family, and this woman, this extraordinary woman.
There's so much that Ryan and I didn't cover about this.
Yeah, we could do a whole nother episode.
We definitely could. I just know that he and I greatly, I'm going to speak for you here real quick, that we both really appreciated this movie.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And if you haven't seen it, please do.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. I highly recommend. I get all the love that it's getting. I get the Best Picture nomination.
Me too.
I get her
All that.
love. She won the Globe. She's probably the favorite to win Best Actress.
Yep.
Completely warranted. She was lights out phenomenal in this. I believed her every frame.
Me too.
Every shot.
Me too. I haven't seen any interviews of her yet, but I'd love to hear her perspective on this, because this woman, what I hadn't said yet was, I said that this was a true story. Eunice, the mother, goes on to become a lawyer. She moves the family to Sao Paulo. She goes back to school. She becomes a massive civil rights lawyer, a real powerhouse for others who are suffering.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. How profound.
What a phenomenal woman.
Yeah, that's the only words. Phenomenal, extraordinary. I mean, that's the only words you can use to describe somebody like that.
So my 5 recommendations, Ryan, are based on courage.
Ooh, love it.
So the first one I have, Life is Beautiful, starring Roberto Benigni. You can see that on Amazon. You haven't seen it?
I don't know if I have seen Life is Beautiful or not. I don't think so.
Need to.
Okay.
Number 2, Saving Private Ryan, starring Tom Hanks.
Great.
You can see that on Paramount Plus.
Great movie.
Number 3, Milk,
Ooh.
starring Sean Penn. You can see that on Amazon Prime. Number 4, Philadelphia, starring Tom Hanks and Denzel Washington. You can see that on Amazon Prime. And number 5, American History X, starring Edward Norton. You can see that on Amazon Prime. One thing I want to say too about American History X. Did you ever see it?
Never.
Oh,
I'm
that
in
needs
for a treat.
that needs to happen.
That's going to be an episode later.
It is.
Yeah.
I just want to mention this about American History X. The meta score from critics, which you can see on IMDb, 62. The IMDb rating from viewers, 8.5.
Wow.
Critics be damned.
Critics and the public not in agreement on American
No,
History
and
X.
I am so on that 8.5 camp.
Sure.
Edward Norton. Oh,
Well, I'll tell you a movie that the critics and the public were aligned on.
This
movie.
one. Absolutely
Everybody
true.
loves it, critics and people alike. And it's, look, I get it without question, man. This movie moved me to tears twice.
Yep, me too.
That scene, again, we're running out of time here, but the scene that really got to me was when they're in the ice cream parlor. She's like, no, we're going to go out for ice cream. And the kids are all excited, strawberry sundaes and whatever. And she looks around to all the other tables with fathers.
Yep.
And then looks at her kids.
Yep.
And she's trying to hold back the emotion, the tears. Oh, it gutted me. It gutted me. That's such a heartwarming moment.
That was one of the scenes I was like, should I talk about that one? So I'm glad you brought that up.
That got me big time.
Yeah, a very, very strong woman. Real courage. And someone who made a difference. Cared enough to make a difference for others.
Went through hell and back.
Went through hell and back. Over. And it wasn't just about helping her kids. She was helping other people in a big way.
Yeah.
Extraordinary woman, extraordinary movie.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
So let's wrap this up.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So what comes first? Our desire to indulge in our emotional impulses and the urge to be heard, or the consideration of how that might affect others. Yes, it's important to express one's emotions, but it's better for everyone if it's done with the consideration of others first. Sure, share your fears, your doubts, your anger with people who can take it, or with the night sky, or with a journal. Please, before you speak, consider your audience.
Love that. Beautifully put.
So thank you so much for joining us today. And remember, as always, you're the main character of your own life. So don't be afraid to take a step back and look at the bigger picture, because sometimes the answers that you're looking for are lying just beyond the frame. We'll see you next time. Peace.
Peace.